So before we get into the questions, I just wanted everyone to take a little 30 seconds to go around, maybe starting with Teddy, to introduce themselves, give their pronouns. Sorry to put you on the spot, first of all. And, talk about who you've written for and what you're working on now.
Hi, I'm Teddy.
Woo!
I use she, her pronouns, and I write songs and produce songs, and I make songs with people. I don't want to talk about it.
Fair.
Teddy's one of the biggest songwriters and producers in the
I
world.
like when you talk about me for me.
Yeah, I can talk about you all fucking day.
Hot.
Any Shawn Mendes song, basically, 90% of the Shawn Mendes hits are written by this queen right here. Written and
He's my
produced.
friend.
True. Yeah. Very accomplished.
And many
songwriter.
more. Hi,
Not Mandy Moore.
and not Mandy. Well, I wish we should both write for Mandy Moore together because that's a queen. Hi, I'm Justin. I use they, them, and their pronouns, but I'm kind of too old to care. So if you slip up and say he or she or it, I'm totally fine with that. But that's a personal thing. That's not for everyone else who uses they, them, and their pronouns. That's just my story, not everybody else's. I write pop songs. I'm an activist. I divide my time equally. I've written songs with Selena Gomez and Justin Bieber and Imagine Dragons and the Jonas Brothers and a whole
Had a few
bunch
number
of
one hits.
I've been very fortunate. I'm very grateful to be here today.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And Shane.
Hi, I'm Shane McAnally, and I mostly work in the country music field. Worked a lot with Casey Musgraves and Sam Hunt, and pretty much all those rednecks, Luke Bryan, Lee Tresney, and I'm really excited to be a part of this. And I also like it when Justin talks about me. It's much easier. And I
Shane
guess
is the most successful country songwriter of our generation.
He is,
see now if I had said that, but I am. And I have the pronoun he, him, his on me, but I also do not. I'm not really attached to any of that. So.
and I think the stat is you have about 1 million number ones on the Hot Country Songs.
Well, it's 1,000,007.
Okay, great. Yeah, I forgot about those.
40.
Yeah.
40.
All right. And Victoria.
I am Victoria Monét. And my pronouns are she and her, but you can just say my name. And yeah, I did some cool songs this year. A lot of songs for Ariana Grande mostly. So.
Yeah. And you have Monopoly with Ariana Grande.
Yes, we
your
have
Hot
a song
100
together.
debut. So
Yes.
congratulations. It's an incredible song.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm Joe Lynch. I'm deputy editor at Billboard. I've been with the company for about 5 years. One of the people who did a little bit to help get Billboard Pride off the ground. And I'm he, him, his. And let's get into this. So the first question I have is a little general, to be honest. But what do you feel as an LGBTQ person in the songwriter's room? What do you bring that people who don't identify as that, what do you bring to the songwriter's room that they can't or might not even think of?
I'll start.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I feel like my queer experience informs everything that I do. And, I know there's a lot of, as queer musicians, as queer artists, whatever we want to call ourselves, you want your music to lead first, but for me, it's all one thing. My queer experience, the femphobia, the homophobia, the beauty of my chosen family, the beauty of my community, the struggles, all of it informs every single thing that I do. So I think that every single lyric I suggest, every single melody I suggest comes from my queer experience because that's exactly who I am. And also, I think that we all want to relate to the underdog story endlessly. And I think there's a reason why Freddie Mercury has written some of the biggest sports anthems of all time.
Yeah. Not exactly the most queer-friendly space, usually.
But we all, everyone feels like an underdog at some point in their existence. Even the whitest, straightest, most masculine cis male at some point feels like an underdog. And I feel like the queer superpower is that we understand the underdog story better than almost anybody. And I have written many sports anthems in my life as well. And I think that there's something to be said for that. The underdog everyone relates to the underdog story, and we tell that story better than anybody,
Yeah.
for better or worse.
Better oftentimes.
Yeah.
Teddy, do you have any thoughts on it?
I don't know. I think, yeah, it's definitely been a part of like, I don't know. I don't know.
We can come back to you on that.
I think there's a power in saying, I don't know. I mean, that's something that is, I know you're being somewhat funny and you maybe didn't know what to say, but I think that's one of the things that I do, maybe bring to the room is that so often, especially in my world, people just don't know. And so being able to tell the truth and to just say my experience, what happens is so often somebody else in the room goes, I have felt just that same way. And it's always somebody who didn't know that we had that in common. And it doesn't matter if they're gay. It's about the underdog, the person that's been hurt, the person that's lost. And we all have done that. And so I think being able to be honest, that part of it for me, for so long I wrote in Nashville, hiding from pronouns and, changing my story just enough so that people just didn't go there. But once I did go there, it really changed the way people responded to me. It felt like more of a connection. What I thought would scare people away actually brought people to me, because then they were like, oh, we do have something in common, and that is that we're human, and that we're scared, and that we're worried about what people think. And so the not knowing actually really made me think that, because so often people just don't know,
This is true. For me, I think in a more literal form, I just came out a year ago, almost a year ago. So before then, I wasn't writing I was just more like secretly writing about women and but saying him and he, and being very shy about it. But now I feel like I can write for a guy who is straight, because I've experienced some of the same things, and I can write it from a genuine, standpoint. I am a woman. I've experienced women, and literally, when I write a song, a heartfelt song, now I feel like it wouldn't be jaded if a male sang it, because when a woman sings it and changes it to he because it fits her because she's straight, I guess it feels like, to me, it changes the intensity and the reasoning behind it. So literally, I feel like I can write better for males because I've experienced women too.
Yeah, you touched on something really important that I wanted to ask all of you about. In terms of pronouns, it has to be sort of odd coming from a queer perspective, but then writing to a mainstream audience that, predominantly caters to a heteronormative society. So, is that kind of odd? Is there a little bit of a creative bump to get over with that ever?
I think that when you tell the truth in any form, the pronouns can, that can come later. When you write it in the moment and with someone from your point of view, but if you're speaking the truth, really, it's someone's story in the room. It doesn't mean that every song you write happened to you. It just means that there's some part of it, just like when you watch a television show that is from a completely different point of view, different place, different kind of people, but we sit there and we empathize and we feel what they're feeling because it's real, because it happened somewhere. And I think that when you're doing that, and that is what we do as songwriters, go in and tell the truth from some point of view, that it can be, when somebody sings it that's straight, somebody that has a different, preference, it doesn't matter, because you're just setting up a situation that we've all been in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I think it's because also too, as songwriters, for the most part, I know that Teddy and Victoria are still kicking ass in their artist projects, but when we have our songwriter hats on, it's you're there to help facilitate somebody else's story.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about our experiences, but you do want to tap into your truth so that you can write better lyrics, so that you can create better sonic situations that reflect their truth better. So you have to tap into your truth, but it's not about us in that moment. It's about, how do I help this person feel safe and confident and secure enough to be as truthful as fuck. And for me, the most exciting pronoun situation I was ever a part of in a song was when I was lucky enough to co-write Halsey's Bad at Love. And, you know, we worked on the pre-choruses and choruses right when we first got there. That was the first thing we did. And she wrote those verses 100% by herself. I can't take any credit for those amazing verses that she wrote. And first verse, she's using he pronouns in a romantic setting. And in the second verse, she's using she pronouns in a romantic setting. And I was just like, oh, did all of my dreams just come true? I was literally just like, she wrote the verses by herself. I was just chilling, and I was like, wow, did we just write like a bisexual smash? Like, is this happening? And then it went to number motherfucking 2, which is pretty, almost as good as number 1. And what was so amazing that I found is that when it comes to young people, you know, to quote the Queen, I believe the children are the fucking future. And to young people, it almost didn't even register, and in a good way. It was just like, well, of course Halsey's bi, so why wouldn't both one verse be for boys and one verse be for girls? To young people, it was like, yeah, duh, she's doing that. Why wouldn't she? And to me, that's like a sign of like pronouns in songwriting actually changing the world.
I want to add something real quick because I love that you mentioned that song. So there's a band in Nashville that I've worked with for years and produced their records and write a lot of songs with them, Old Dominion. And they did, for Spotify, they did a thing where they do those covers, and they chose to do Bad at Love. And they didn't change the pronouns. Now, what I loved about it is that the whole opening verse, both pieces of the first verse, are he. And I was so proud of those guys. I mean, you know, I almost felt like a little bit of that was a nod to me because they were some of the first people I came out with in the music business. And they are true good old boys from, like, you know, the countryest states and the countryest towns. And I don't know, it just felt like, wow. I mean, when I was working on that with them, and I said, so what are you going to do about, like, all these pronoun changes? And, you know, Matt Ramsey, he just said, well, I'm going to sing it the way it was written, you know, and I just love that. I love that song.
Thank you.
Song. Do you think the world is becoming more open? You're, you know, I guess caring less about pronouns now than, you know, say 5 years ago. Do you think that we've had that much of a seismic shift?
As a GLAAD board member, I'm happy to answer that question. We're in a very interesting time. We have an administration who is attacking I can't even say it my goddamn self. I'm a bad GLAAD board member. It's attacking our community more than any administration in modern political times. And so that's really scary. We're in this really scary place where our government is literally trying to take rights away. And we don't even have that many rights. If you don't know, in more states than not, LGBTQ people can be fired from their jobs for simply being LGBTQ. We can be denied housing. The amount of black trans women that are being murdered is truly, truly shocking. If you need links, go to my Instagram. There's many. The amount of trans people that are being detained by ICE right now is really shocking. And so we're in this weird political landscape where things are getting really bad for our community. But when it comes to the media, when it comes to music, there's a lot more work that we need to do, but things are looking better than they ever have. Yeah. So there's this crazy dichotomy of our government trying to destroy us while media is finally embracing us a little bit. They need to do a lot more, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Oh, well, for myself, I feel like as I'm experiencing my experience, I'm learning a lot myself, because 5 years ago I had no idea about pronouns. To be honest, I was just like, well, I secretly like women, so, and there's a lot of gay people. Like I didn't know the spectrum. I had no idea. So I think a lot of media coverage is helping us as a community understand each other. So I'm really happy about that. I know that there's a long way to go, and there's a lot of people that are still not are still uncomfortable saying who they truly are. So, and even in the music industry, I feel like, you know, we hear rumors and like people who have hooked up, just to be frank. and they're not comfortable with the idea of the pronouns they would be attached to, or their sexuality, or their experience being shared in their music, in their work, and in their regular life, because they're afraid of what would happen politically, or people's opinions. So I think us all coming together and celebrating each other and doing things like this are super important, and like spreading what's said today and the energy that we've shared today outside of these spaces, because maybe there's people who feel like us that aren't here today because they're scared. So let's.
Yeah.
That was so well said, and I feel like being here and listening to you guys. Yes. I mean, I could just as easily be sitting and need to be sitting out there and listening and learning. I'm scared of pronouns.
Yeah.
It scares me because I don't want to mess up and I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't understand a lot of it. And I think it's those conversations happening internally that then we are informed enough that we can go out and let other people know. And so this is really important.
For sure.
I think with pronouns too, it's somewhat of a skill. Like my little sister, like, will snap. She goes to like art school in Boston, and she's 18, and like she'll meet someone and be like, "Hey, what are your pronouns?" "Okay, awesome, got it."
Right.
Whereas like my mom's still like, "When Teddy was little, he was such a good." "Oh wait, I'm sorry, shit." Like.
Come on, Mom.
And there's just a lot, and there's a lot of that in sessions and stuff too, because people knew who I was for so long before, and they're meeting me in this context where in my head I'm somebody, and there definitely is a learning curve, and I think it's a learned skill, and it's something that everyone right now, the majority of people are very used to reading somebody and doing it however they, and not even having the thought. But I don't know, It's really cool to see her, and just she's like on it.
Yeah. Do you have advice for people?
Even like I'm not very good at it, but I'm getting better. I am.
Advice for people who want to help but might not be sure how to talk about it or something like that.
I have no idea. I would say talk about it.
Ask the question.
Ask the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a nice, respectful way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as LGBTQ people, do you find that you're usually the only member of that community in a given songwriter session? And if that's the case, is that changing lately?
What's the question?
Sorry. If you were in a songwriter session, do you find that you're usually the only LGBTQ identifying songwriter in that room?
Unless I'm working with Teddy, I am 100% the only one, for sure.
Yeah.
Luckily, I get to work with this queen. But if we aren't together, I am for sure the only one. And it's a weird thing because at least I'm there, at least someone from our community is there. But I hope we get to a place where there's a lot more. And I think it's an issue of homophobia, of femphobia, of transphobia. There's that, and then it's just the issue too of, I was so excited to be on this panel today because I want young LGBTQ people everywhere to know that there is space for you in this business. If you want to be a superstar, fucking go for it. I tried my damnedest. Go for it. But there are also other jobs for us to have in this community. And I think that queer people, LGBTQ people, and women, no matter how they identify, you're told that either you're a superstar or you're hair and makeup. And that is it. And now, superstars are great, and hair and makeup is fucking amazing. Thank you for mine today. But there are other places to exist in this business. And I think it's so cool to have 4 pretty major hit makers on this stage to let young LGBTQ people know there are other places in this business for you to thrive and tell your stories and help other people tell their stories.
Yeah. And Shane, for you in the country space.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I don't really, there are females that Brandy Clark that I work with a lot. I mean, Casey Musgraves is definitely a gay man. I don't care. I mean, she just is. So I don't ever really notice it, but no. But there, I also hope that by someone seeing something like this, and I try to say that all the time, and I try to, a lot of times I'll get approached in Nashville by someone who says, I'm gay and I'm a songwriter. How do I do this? And I don't know that I've ever had the right answer for that, because I think that I just worked my ass off and, stayed in it and met people who had no problem with that. And also, obviously, when you are successful, people tend to not look at those things. If you're having a lot of hits, say someone is homophobic, they're certainly not going to let you know it.
It's a privilege.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hits lend you privilege that you can walk in doors that normally homophobia and femphobia and transphobia would stop you from walking through.
Right, exactly. And so I don't know that I have always had the right answer to that, except that it requires a great deal of work and a great deal of compassion for other songwriters, be it whatever it is that keeps them from walking in those rooms or from getting with the right people. It's not always that someone is gay or trans or lesbian. There are many. I mean, in our community, there are no people of color. I shouldn't say no, but few, and that's a whole other conversation in Nashville. So I feel really privileged, and I have been extremely blessed. But as far as spreading that word, at this point, I'm talking in a big circle, and I have no idea what the question was.
Fair enough. Well, what do you think artists and executives can do to get more LGBTQ songwriters in the industry? Get through that door in the first place.
See, that question is tricky for me because I feel like we have a lot of work to do with the people who are already in it, and I don't want it to feel like we're just trying to meet a quota and be the token LGBTQ plus person because it looks good, in the media or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I feel like by making the people who already exist in the community comfortable and willing to, outpour their real feelings and be themselves truly and unapologetically, I think by that they will inspire more people who are interested in music naturally and happen to be LGBTQ plus. They will comfortably come into this space and have some mentors who have experienced some things. And I feel weird saying that also because I came out in a time where I was very confident. Thank You Next had just came out. I was like, fuck it. You know what I mean? So I didn't really, and people on Twitter were like, tight, we like this. This is awesome. We're with you. We feel the same way. And so I think my experience was the reverse, and I was hiding it for a long time, and to come out was felt more positive than negative. And it's one of the only places in life as a Black woman where I feel privileged, more privileged than a male, because I'm femme-presenting, bisexual, and in my community, there's some weird, it's a fantasy for guys, so they're like, oh, it's just a phase, or when did you start liking girls? When I'm like, these are the wrong questions, but this is one of the only spaces where my sexuality and my spectrum identification feels more privileged than a guy in a weird way, and especially a gay male, a gay Black male. I feel like there's a hierarchy, a weird, stupid hierarchy. So I want to break that more than anything, and see more people who are on the spectrum do bigger things and be supported and have space to explore and express themselves.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
You said it perfectly. I just love her.
The best.
Yay.
Do either of you have thoughts on, what people in the, you've been in the industry a minute, what do you...
What are you trying to say?
I'm saying you don't look a day over 21.
Thank you.
What do you think people can do to open those doors that have historically been closed to LGBTQ people?
I think that, just to speak for myself, I think it's such an honor that I fought so hard to get where I am. And now I'm in a place where I can pay my privilege forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I talk about all the time, is she a diamond? Are you here? Queen? No, she's not here. Bitch. But this amazing, amazing artist named Shia Diamond, who should be here right now. And when I met her, I think if it was 10 years ago, I would have written a song about the stories that she told me. Mm-hmm. And now where I am, I said, no, why the fuck would I try and tell her story for her? I should use my platform and my money and whatever I can and my connections to let her tell her own goddamn story.
Right.
And, And as a trans woman of color, she has a story that really, really needs to be told. And she's telling it beautifully and brilliant, and I'm just lucky to help be a part of that process. And so I feel like, you know, to paraphrase Roxane Gay, if you are listening to this, you have some sort of privilege. You know, no matter whether it's financial, racial, sexuality, we all have a lot of shit to fight through. But if you're listening to this, you have some sort of privilege, because there's a lot of people who have no chance of being in this room. And so if you're in this room, you have some form of privilege, and you need to pay that shit forward every chance that you get. And so we need our allies to step the fuck up, but let's step up for each other. Let's step up for each other and let the allies catch up, because who's going to fight for us better than ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I also want to ask, you know, have you, in I guess an artist or songwriter capacity, encountered any outright homophobia or transphobia? And then on the other side of the equation, have you ever gotten surprising support from someone you didn't expect to get it from?
I was entirely surprised of having support, because I really don't know any other trans girls that that are songwriters, like, you know, like I know you, but I don't know if you'd qualify. I don't know so I don't really know anyone. Like, I know Sophie, who's a producer, and she's awesome, but is more of an artist and very like insular. Like, there's not a ton of people like in the group that I'm writing with that are my friends in that circle that I felt like I could really talk to about it. So I kind of just like brought it up on Instagram and was like, okay, when I see it, it's gonna be a little different. Like, let's see how it goes. And I was so scared for so long about what that would mean, and everyone was fine. And I feel like I ran into someone too at some point who was in some way, shape, or form working for a label, and we're kind of starting the process of coming out, and they mentioned to me that was like helpful for them to just see me coming, you know. And I think for me to see Sophie coming out, and for me to see like Kim Petras doing what she does, and every person who comes out and walks out and says like, this is who I am. I was thinking about I was like, okay, what's really linking like LGBTQ? Like, what is the common thing? Because everybody's so different, and it's all totally different things. And being trans it's not even a sexual orientation. Like, what? And I feel like it's the ability to hide, and the choice you have to make to be visible, because it's so easy to say like, I am, you know, I've known I was trans since I was 5. But I didn't tell anyone, and I doubted myself, and I had all these feelings, and I tell my therapist, but I don't need to tell anyone else about it. Like, I'm just gonna like tuck that in. Like, why? Like, why even tell anyone? Like, I can tuck that in. And I feel like that's such a common thread through experiences of feeling like, well, I can just push that down. And I think when people, like you were saying, we kind of have to stand up for each other. And even just by standing up for yourself and being like, this is what I need, and I'm going to do this. I think I'm so inspired by people doing that. And I'm happy that I've been able to help anyone else with that. And like, I don't know.
Amazing.
That's my 2 cents.
No, it's amazing.
Well, actually, and I wanted to ask you as well, you know, did you feel once you shared that with the world and, you know, got the response, did that change your songwriting at all? Like on the wonderful Liliana album, like, you know, did it make a difference before and after?
I think with other people, it changes how I interact with the world, and I don't feel like I have this big secret covered in like a black shroud of shame. So when I walk into a room, I can like, I'm not like averting my eyes constantly, like, don't see me. Kind of. Yeah.
I think it's also so beautiful to point out too, like, I know for me, like, I'm so obsessed with our songwriter community. It's so collaborative and so magical. And, you know, when you came out as trans and when you came out as bi, which I didn't even know that you came out until I read the Billboard article. And for me, it's at fucking 39 years old, like people living their truth and representation really fucking matters, because I freaked out with joy. I was like, oh my God, like there's so many LGBTQ people like killing it in our magical songwriter world that I didn't even realize because you beautiful people weren't out yet. And so I was like, holy fuck, like we own this shit. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like at 39, I can still be inspired by and moved by people just telling the truth and representation. And it's really beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, being yourself is still a bit of an act of defiance in this world. But I wanted to return to the question I had asked earlier. Either of you, have you encountered surprising support from people you didn't expect it from, or, you know, instances of homophobia?
As far as homophobia goes, not to my face, and that's all I can go on. But I certainly heard things when I was hiding, and I loved when you talked about hiding, because that is the difference. And sitting in rooms and hearing people say slurs and things and not speaking up, that's I have, I guess, guilt, but I'm glad I'm on the other side of that. But there was a lot of times, and honestly, with that, a couple of times people have come back and said, I don't know if I ever said anything. I know we were drunk together or close or whatever, and if I did, I'm sorry. And that takes a lot of courage. Again, especially from where I work. I mean, Nashville, it is a different world there. And as far as support, I've been surprised over and over and over. And the main thing that surprises me is, most country music artists are very religious, or come from a very religious background. And I come from a religious background, and so I think that people being able to sort of separate in their minds that those two things don't go together. That's been the only tough conversations that have come up over and over, is the conversation about Christianity and how I reconcile that. And at times that conversation is, I'm really proud of someone being able to say that to me, because they didn't walk out of the room and say it. And then there are times when it's very frustrating because people have their ideas the way they are. But mostly it's been so positive, and so many, again, of those. I joke about rednecks, but I mean, they would call themselves that. And they didn't have any gay friends or know anyone, before. They didn't know they did. And they've just all been so accepting of my family, of my husband, of my children. That it just feels very inclusive to me.
That's beautiful. I'll say for me, it's more so the questions I get from males that feel a little bit homophobic. Like the one, my favorite is, what do y'all do? Like when you're talking about like two girls, they're like, so they just can't comprehend what happens. And I'm like, and so I think it starts first of all, watch some porn. Second of all, like start from when you're young. It starts when they're young, and like, for my specifically talking about like urban culture, it's just not a thing. You know what I mean? Like they're like, okay, sit down. You've gone to LA and gone crazy. It's like, especially since now, because of my sexuality is tied with success. It's like Billboard. I had the honor to grace the cover of Billboard this year, and inside it says she's bisexual. So my family's reading it, and they're like, so it's like a really strong push of like, this is going to be a thing that follows you through. And they weren't prepared for me to be finally coming to a point of success and have that title attached to me. So that's a thing I have to deal with outside of the music industry. But inside the music industry, I feel like for me so far, because it's only been about a year, the craziest things are just the questions. And it's kind of disappointing, though, that I can't speak on any other experiences for people because they're not represented. Like, I wouldn't be able to have identified any homophobia or anything for anybody else because they're not even in the rooms. So I'd like to see a change for that and more tolerance for them and everybody who feels that need to express themselves and be true to who they are. Just be more, it should feel more warm for everybody. I know my experience was kind of like a buttercup version of it, because I was really lucky when I came out. So for me, I think for the next people who are ready to do that, it's just important for me to make it feel comfortable for them.
That is so important for you to have acknowledged. I actually have those feelings too, because I think that I have some sort of scale of what I think, how much harder it would be for Teddy than it would have been for me. I mean, this is what I'm thinking. Like, I also, I feel that too. Like, sometimes I think, like, how can I even speak on that panel? I don't understand what other folks have gone through.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. That is that we have to feel safe and comfortable speaking up whatever our experience was. And that's the only way that we're going to get it out there. That other people that feel like you, like me, like both of you, that's the thing, is it's not a scale per se, but it's just showing all of our experiences.
Yeah.
Well, and there's something interesting too about, like, for me, when I was in the artist lane, the homophobia and the femmephobia that I experienced was beyond shocking from this industry. I would get people, A&Rs would come to our shows and they'd be so excited because we had this really rabid, amazing fan base for my old band. And they would sign us and we would be so excited, and then literally there'd be just mass emails to the whole company that I was CC'd on being like, okay, in this video we need to edit that shot out, his hands are too feminine, and then in this part we need to do that, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but I'm in 6-inch heels and full makeup. So like, are we really worried about my fucking wrist? But they were. And those were things that I heard as I thought my dreams were coming true. And I was signed to 4 record deals as an artist and dropped from them all. 4. And only 2 albums were put out. And the labels that didn't put albums out, it was because of homophobia and femmephobia. And so I think that it's an interesting thing too for me as someone who's very femme and very queer, and my band was hypersexual. The things that I saw on the internet and management would just say, well, that's just what's going to happen to you. They wouldn't know what, even like respectable, the Village Voice, respectable press outlets would be saying horrible things about who I was and what I was doing, and like completely deleting my musicianship and my band members' musicianship, and they were all straight, but because I was so femme, they just decided that we were all femme crazy people. And so the experience, I think, is what's so interesting about our community is it's so diverse, and we've all experienced different sides of it. But what is beautiful about being a songwriter is that, yes, there's homophobia and femmephobia and transphobia and racism and blah, 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 but it's a much more truthful space. And if you fucking deliver, you fucking deliver. And that's why I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, we have just a few minutes left, but I would like to open it up to any audience questions, since we do have such a remarkable panel up here. So do we have a mic going around? Yes, we do. There's someone in the front, or I guess, sorry, that's, you might as well. So yes, please, just a reminder to be respectful and concise.
Yes, of course. Always. Hi, everyone. I'm Jake. First of all, it's an honor to ask all of you a question. I respect you all immensely, and I'm a fan of each of your work, so thank you. I'm also a singer-songwriter. I identify as gay. And I would like to just know, from a tactical standpoint, I hate everything that I'm writing right now. When you guys find yourselves in that mindset, how do you get out of it? And are there any skills you've learned to really push yourselves and get your songs to a better place?
I just tell myself it's good until it actually is. Just like positive delusion to get you through it.
Do you collaborate? Do you write your stuff by yourself? Yeah, I mean, honestly, it might be part of it, is just to bring in someone else. It's amazing what the right collaborator can rattle. I mean, I know that changed things for me.
For sure. I agree.
Definitely collaborate, 100%.
Hello, y'all. How are you doing? So thank you so much for sharing your truths and for being vulnerable in this space. I know that LA sometimes can come with a tome of silence about shit that's difficult, but I appreciate you for keeping it real with us. So I am a big fan of Elton John, and everyone else should be. But in the biopic that came out recently, there is a line in Rocket Man that changed the song from "I Miss the Earth So Much." I changed it to "I Miss My Life" instead of "I Miss My Wife." And so when you're talking about changing pronouns and kind of in a way that honors queerness, I wanted to get your thoughts on that kind of inverse change where instead of it being the band that kept pronouns that could have been seen as queer, making it instead of it being like straight washed to being honoring Elton John's authentic self. So any thoughts you have would be great. Thank you.
Hi, Blair. How are you? She's an amazing activist in our presence. Amazing activist. We are lucky to have you here. I think that's a really, really interesting question. I think the questions about Elton and Freddie and so many of our amazing queer rock and roll icons, it runs so deep too, because we also have to remember that they were in the closet as they became super, super, super famous. And so when we use them as examples of, well, queer people can be superstars too, that example isn't always true. And I 100% believe that LGBTQ people are superstars and are currently superstars and will continue to be. But when you look at people like Elton and Freddie and George Michael, and there's many, many other examples, they rose to fame in the closet. And so even though they were very campy and femme and all these different things, the world could still say, oh, they're just show people, but they're straight and they have wives and blah, blah, blah. And so I don't have a specific answer to that question, but I'm glad you brought it up because it is a really important thing to think about when we're thinking about the future. We need LGBTQ people to be able to start their careers living their truth and still be superstars. It can't happen later.
True.
Yeah. All right, well, we have time probably to squeeze in one quick question, if someone has one. We have one up front.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle. I use they, them, or she, her pronouns. And I make music, really vulgar, trans girl music. One of my
I'm sold.
Yes. And this question's kind of directed at you, but all of you. Like, one of the songs I make is called Girl Cock. And it's like, doesn't seem like it would make it to like the mainstream in this climate, I guess. So my question is, like, with your experience of like just being heavily criticized for that, should our goal be to try to make it to the mainstream with songs like that? Or is it, because for me, I have really strong ties to community, and for me, like, I do not want to compromise like what my music's about to make it to fame. And so I guess, would you have any input about that?
Yeah, I do. In my band, which if anyone wants to look it up, it was called Semi-Precious Weapons. And
Great band.
thank you. No one knows who that is, but I appreciate that. But we did have this really beautiful, passionate fan base, and I never compromised who I was. And my songs were very sexual and very femme and very vulgar. And that beautiful, beautiful fan base that we had, I didn't even realize how special it was until later. Now I meet people as a pop songwriter, and whether it's in the airport or wherever it is, and they tell me that they've been following my career since 2006, and that this song did that for them, or this, and I thought no one was hearing those songs, but the people who fucking needed them heard them. And so I am so glad that I lived in my truth in that moment, and it really taught me how to, now where I am, help other people live in their truth. And if their truth is more mainstream, no judgment, I'm grateful for it. It's changed my fucking life. But I lived in my truth, which was not mainstream, and I don't regret it for one fucking second because it helped people and it got me to where I am today.
Sure. Yeah.
I just want to say that the word cock in the title, I mean, honestly, that has, that's a reason enough that it probably wouldn't end up in a commercial world. I'm just saying, I don't think the fact that it's girl cock is going to keep it from the fact that, it's the word cock. But I mean, that's the thing, is like you write the songs the way they have to be written. You tell the story the way they have to be told, regardless of if it fits in a commercial mainstream space or not. And, right along Girl Cock might be a song that isn't as polarizing as that, but still is truthful to you. And I think that you have to write those songs and tell those stories to also tell the ones that the mainstream wants to hear. I mean, it's like with your writing for the band and being able to flex that muscle, you also have written songs that have been in the mainstream. And I think it's because of both. You have to, you have to let that creativity come out and not be compromised for the things that everyone will, gravitate towards, and not just not listen because the word cock is in the title. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people, you lost them right there. And so
you'll gain a lot of people from that.
Absolutely. And like you said, the people that need to hear it will. But I think that having those kind of songs, writing those kind of truths, will ultimately lead to the songs. If commercial success is what you long for, both they can coexist.
And what mainstream is changing. As songwriters, we all love radio because it's the place that actually respects songwriters by paying them. Right. But what mainstream means is changing so drastically, and there because you're writing songs and you perform them yourself, right? You're the artist. So as an artist, both of you live for it. So as the artists, there are so many different ways to survive in this industry besides. All of us, we need the fucking radio still because it's the only place that pays us. As an artist with touring, with all these different things, you live your truth, you go fucking hard as you want, and the audience that you want will find you, and they will love you for living in your truth. And if at some point you want to do what I did and become more mainstream and live down the middle, then do that. But while you're in this moment, fucking go for it and let them come to you.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful place to end on, and I want to thank Teddy, Justin, Shane, and Victoria, really from the bottom of my heart. This was an honor to do, so thank you so much. All right.